make sure to record those who are on.
council meetings.
You can go onto the website and you can see it.
Yeah, but you know, a lot of people are probably like me and don't know, and the mayor is very big about wanting to have this transparency and citizen involvement. So, Mr. Mayor, if you're listening, please have the schedule posted for when we can rewatch the meetings.
It's not up to him. Okay. Okay, 7 o'clock. we'll call the meeting to order and we'll do roll call. Who's doing roll call?
I will.
Okay.
This is Lindsay. I'm behind the microphone because I'm running all parts of this today, so bear with me, please. Chairwoman Tammy DeWitt,
Yes, here.
Vice Chair Elizabeth Johnston is absent, I believe. Member Chuck Budinger,
Here.
Member Francisco Anaya. Member JD Greenberg.
Here,
Member Deb Pastor.
She's on, we're gonna have to move her over.
Thank you.
She was supposed to be on tonight.
Bear with me, I'm just doing some housekeeping things on the Zoom meeting. Member John Pratt. Simpo Staff Liaison Lindsay Post, present. Staff Liaison Dan Cherry.
Present.
So I think
Do we have quorum?
1, 2.
Deb just said that she's here in the chat, but Deb, you
Yeah.
might try unmuting and see if your voice can be heard.
Yeah, Deb, you're muted.
And I just moved you over to panelists.
Hold on a second.
I am here and thank you very much.
Thanks,
Okay,
Deb.
thank you.
hi Deb.
So we have
Hey,
4. So we have 4. How many do we need for a quorum?
I think that was that enough. We have 7 members.
Yes, okay, we're okay.
Okay. we have quorum.
We have quorum, barely, except one just left. Okay.
Yes, Chuck. Just excuse himself, he should be here. And Vinny, I could see is in the office. Just for housekeeping purposes, if you don't mind. For ease of access, if you need any help hearing or understanding what we're saying, focus your attention down to the bottom of your screen. You should have a CC closed captioning option. If it's not at the bottom of your screen, you can also use the 3 dots for more, and that should also get you there. So I hope everybody can participate in this way. And welcome to those who are joining via public. Okay, Madam Chair.
Okay, I think I got this through our meeting procedures. If during the time that any of you would like to comment, as an attendee, you can raise your hand and we'll try to make sure to watch that very carefully today. So we have called to the public. This item is to provide an
Let's
opportunity.
do the
Huh?
Title VI.
Oh, okay. Simple complies with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and related non-discrimination statutes, regulations, and all programs and activities. Members of the public may review the Simpo Title VI plan and submit a self-identification survey by accessing the Simpo website. This meeting is available for public viewing on the Simpo YouTube page and online. Okay, call the public. This item is provide an opportunity for presentation of comments by the public on subjects not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the board need not request permission in advance and are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone from the public on the Zoom who would like to speak? I'm not.
You can raise your hand. Madam Chair, I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay. Wow, okay. Any announcements and updates?
Simpo will have an announcement in just a second, and I'll let Vinny make that announcement. Anything else from our end is related to the agenda that you'll see, and we've got the items listed that I wanted to update you on. The only other thing that's coming down the pike for us in Simpo is the active transportation plan, which we're going to focus a lot more heavily on bike and pedestrian. So we look forward to engaging this body when it comes time to do that as well. But I think you'll have a special interest in that work and have a special help for us in that work as well. So that's my announcement for us. Does anybody else have an announcement they'd like to make?
No? Vinny?
No, I'll save mine for the next item.
So item number 5, Vinny?
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Chair and members of the EMAC group. Sorry I couldn't join you today. Just a couple brief announcements. So if you've been tracking the legislative budget, got wrapped up last week, towards the end of the week. As we've mentioned before, announced before, SIMPA's been working on several legislative asks for additional one-time funding of transportation projects. We got a little bit of what we asked for, so I guess it's better than nothing. So what we have at this point is $3 million towards the improvements of the SR 89, 89A eastbound on-ramp. So if you're going from Prescott to Chino Valley and you turn right to go to Prescott Valley on SR 89A, currently there's there's one lane that takes you onto 89A, and the right lane would just keep you on the frontage road and get you back to some of the commercial and medical areas in the back. SIMPO just recently did a study on that exact area. And as traffic has increased to that intersection, there is a need for an additional on-ramps lane. We did an evaluation. Long story short, the additional lane design and construction will cost about $5.5 million. The reason I'm telling you all this is because we did get partial funding for that project. So if the project's going to cost around $5.5 million, the state legislators approved $3 million towards the project. I've been talking with ADOT. It's their intent to fund the remaining balance of it through what they call a minor district fund. So we would hope in the next year we would move forward with the design and then the construction to add that additional on-ramps lane. The other monies we got was for the roundabout at the border of Prescott Valley and Dewey Humboldt, or at the intersection of State Route 69, 169. It's currently a three-way intersection, and the direction is to turn that into a roundabout at this point. So we were able to get some additional funds for it. Currently, ADOT has a little over $3 million. We were able to get $1.5 million to add to the project to ensure that any cost overruns are covered. So those were some of the things we got. As Lindsay mentioned earlier, it is our intent this year to move forward with our what we're calling an active transportation plan. What that'll do is that'll look at what are the bicycle and pedestrian facilities in the Quad City area or the central Yavapai area. We want to, really take inventory of what the region has. And then we want to be able to see, what will it take to improve those areas? As you would imagine, you look at the Quad City area and it's pretty different from one place to the next. Compare a town of or a city of Prescott to a little bit more rural in Chino Valley or Dewey Humboldt. So we recognize that, we realize that it's not as though we're looking to do a paved sidewalk in all areas or a designated bicycle, but are there opportunities for some improvements? And again, we recognize and realize that, the county, the cities, the towns, they all have their own policies, priorities. So again, we're not necessarily looking to dramatically turn that upside down at all, but how do we work with what everybody has and still make that infrastructure so that we can have an area for that quality of life. We do want to really tie into that open space that the county, Prescott Valley and Prescott's looking at. That's the Glassford Hill State Trust area. That's, intended to be an open space area. I know Prescott Valley's pitching the idea for Glassford Hill to really be a bicycle area on the hill in addition to hiking. So we want to have that as part of the study also. Those are probably the highlights for now. If there's any questions or comments, happy to answer them, and then I could chime in on some other items as we go on. So any questions or comments, Tammy, happy to take them from the group.
Anyone have any questions or anything?
The only thing I have, Vinny, is if you wanted to make any announcements about SIMPO staffing.
Thank you. Bryn Stotler is coming back to SIMPO. If you've been around the last couple years, you know her. She left SIMPO about 4 years ago to be the City of Prescott Development Services Director. Tammy knows her well. Tammy worked for her just recently. So we are very excited to have Bryn join us. She'll be starting this Thursday. Essentially, Lindsay and Bryn will be our two SIMPO planners. Lindsay's focus will be as what you've experienced, a little bit more on the federal highway side or the road side. And Bryn will be a little bit more on the multimodal transit side, but there'll be plenty of overlap. So you'll see Bryn at the next EMAC meeting. But Bryn's focus when she gets back that I'll be giving to her is to really help us to with the transit engagement. There's quite a few opportunities that we have, and we want her to take advantage of that. So pretty excited to have Bryn back. It'll be a good reuniting with her. So thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Deb.
Any other questions for? Okay. Consideration and possible action to approve the April 25th, 2022 meeting minutes of the EMAC. Are there any corrections or motion?
I'll move that we accept the minutes for the April 25th meeting.
Okay. A second?
Yes.
Okay, Chuck will second it. All those in favor say aye.
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 Deb? Muted.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? No. Okay. Minutes passed as presented.
We have a quorum,
Yes, we have 4,
just barely.
barely. Yes. So item 7, review, discussion, and possible action to recommend approval of resolution 2022-0-02 for preservation of open space on Glassford Hill. Lindsay.
Yes, and please pardon me while I scroll, I do apologize. And it's a funny thing that this made it in this way. So I made highlights to areas where I was unsure of. So you're probably confused when you received it like this. So first of all, Allison and I need to figure out what that resolution number will be. I made that up. And then I intended for the who in highlight to be an indication that I need some help going, wait, who is this? Who are we resolving to? And so please do excuse me on that. If this is accepted, I hope you'll trust that I will fill in those blanks. But I also want to open up the discussion to see if there's anything that we missed that is there an impact or a value that I've missed in this resolution that you think belongs here. I did the best I could to think of all the reasons why we would want this open space, but I do want to open it up to you to see what your ideas are, if I've missed anything.
Lindsay and Chairwoman, if I could have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
The only thing, and this is good, I would just offer this one suggestion. Sorry, I didn't make it earlier, Lindsay. Would I, and I'm open to a conversation. I would rather see this resolution signed by the executive board. So I'd like to see the EMAC review this, be supportive of it, and recommend this to the TAC so that they can review it. I would be very open to, we could include the chair of EMAC in the resolution. We could include the TAC chairperson. It would just add that much more strength to it, that rather than just have a kind of an EMAC only resolution. So bottom line, I'm open to who signs it, but I would like to see the executive board ultimately put their name to it and the TAC. So that would be my recommendation and ask.
Is it really necessary that we have to go through the TAC? Can't we just recommend it with having Dan here and just forward it for the next executive meeting? Because I think some things are moving pretty fast in this area.
Yeah, no, and I think I'm confused, JD. I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, but why does it have to go EMAC then before the TAC and then get to the executive board? Why, with having Dan here as a representative of TAC, can't we just forward it directly to executive committee?
Because you're an advisory group to the TAC, and basically you serve under the TAC. And unfortunately, as much as I would like to give Dan full run of the show, which would make my life easier, he doesn't have the majority, or he doesn't have all the votes for the TAC, so he's a liaison to the TAC, I guess, is what I would say.
Plus, timing wise, the tax hits before the executive meeting, so we couldn't get an action on it any faster, even if we skip tax, so yeah, it's a good thought.
I guess this just brings up something that when we were established was kind of a compromise that I didn't always understand why on some things that weren't as, I'm searching for the word, technical, that it had to go through that we are at the bottom of the totem and not in some ways, more similar to what the TAC is. But if that's the way it has to be, then, but I do agree with you that I think that it would be stronger going through the executive board with the understanding that it did originate with the EMAC committee.
Yeah, and I hate to put this out there. I'm tempted, again, JD, maybe I'll offer an additional compromise. I think what I offered initially really adds strength to this resolution, which is what you want. You want SIMPO as a whole, you want the board, TAC and EMAC all on the same page. If the group, and it's a group discussion, if the group wants to offer some statement, I would be open to what that statement is from EMAC with Dan's insight that it's in line with SIMPO's vision, mission, and that it's not in conflict with the TAC and the board, which I don't expect it to be. But again, I think my thing, JD, would be make your statement as strong as possible. And the way to do that is the board and the TAC. But the group in itself can offer some statement supporting this project. And
Well, Vinny, I think it goes again to the legitimacy of this committee and the perception in the community that we haven't been doing as much as we could be doing. And I think this is just one clear example where it very clearly comes under, our jurisdiction in terms of wildlife corridors and saving wildlife, that I just want it recognized that this committee is doing something and that we do push it, take it forward to the executive board. So it just is, this is one tiny little feather in our cap, and I'd like to see us get it, please.
Vinny, when is the TAC gonna meet next?
next meeting would be August, the first Thursday of August, whatever that ends up falling on, I'll tell you here in a sec.
That's
August the 4th.
So what's the timing concern on this? Because the county and city and town have already adopted
Yeah.
the IGA that lays out what the intent on this is.
Well, the thing, we brought it up at the last meeting, which was what, April 25th, and now it's not going to be showing that we're in support of this until August. It just, we were discussing it and wanting to bring it forward before the cities and the county act. Well, the county and Prescott Valley had already taken action, but the city of Prescott hadn't. So again, it just speaks to our credibility as a committee.
Okay, but it's already happened at this point. So is there a push to do it in an expedited manner
Well, if we,
when it's already happened? You know what I mean?
as a compromise, could we at least, in submitting it, indicate that it was a topic, a subject that had been brought up at our April meeting and that we wish to push it forward? So at least it shows that, we didn't wait until after everybody had approved it before submitting the resolution. So that would be, I think,
Well, it's shown that we are approved and adopted on June 27th here. But
Right.
it takes, you have to say, yes, we're supportive, then they have to create the document. So that's the process.
Well, I
Because
just
we're
want-
meeting every other month that,
But JD, it is showing that we will approve and adopt it today, but
Yeah.
not today. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
today is the 27th.
Yeah.
I think it will change to
but
recommend
actually,
for,
if it hadn't been
approval.
that we had to go through the, what, Robert's rules or whatever,
Right.
we would have we would have brought it up and voted on it at the April meeting.
But
As
we
we
didn't have a
can-
document to approve, so.
Right.
Well, it does help me, JD, just so you know, as staff liaison, edify myself on how I can better prepare, that's just a lesson learned for me, I think, for timing in the future.
So should this resolution reference the IGA that the three agencies adopted?
Now, that is a really good suggestion. Yes, because I put the open space policies, you're right, I probably should add the IGA.
That would be a good idea,
Yeah.
maybe in that first preamble paragraph.
Could be, yeah, good idea.
And I have two items.
Okay,
One is under the third whereas. Aquifers is spelled with an I, not an A. AQUIFERS.
good,
Typo. And then the very next phrase, providing habitat for wildlife. Can we put provide habitat and continuous movement or
We've used corridor connectivity.
connectivity? Yeah,
that's a good one.
providing habitat and connectivity or habitat connectivity for wildlife and provide aesthetic and recreational value. Yeah, these are all great. They're really good.
thank you. These are really good suggestions.
So the IGA lays out like a 10-year process to pursue this. So, this is not something that is going to happen overnight. It's not something that is, necessarily critical there be, immediate action. I think, the three agencies are budgeting funding for it, but it'll be funding budgeted over time rather than everything that's approved as of July 1st. So, I think there's, this, while it does come in a little after the fact, it still is supportive of the overall goals of the IGA, which is to acquire this land, develop this land accordingly with these purposes that are outlined in the resolution. So, I'm still, I want to be very clear that, even if we're coming in or there's a perception that we're coming in late, it is still early on in this process. It's just had the IGA approved. It hasn't really, nothing's been decided. There's been a little discussion with state land and things like that.
Well, the other thing too is that third whereas we are bringing in the wildlife issue, whereas the cities and the counties seem to be focused more on just keeping the open space for recreation, hiking, biking, and not necessarily the protection of wildlife, and we do bring that forward, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Are there any other suggestions or recommendations? No? Go
I
ahead.
had one and I just left my brain.
Okay,
Sorry.
So on that last, now therefore be it resolved,
Yeah.
there's a question about who are we urging?
Right.
I think it should be directed, if you're gonna approve something today, it needs to be directed to the TAC, it needs to be directed to the executive board.
Mhm.
And then,
So where it
and then
says.
they
we
probably
just
will
say
need their own
executive
resolution, I'm guessing, to then put something forth, is my guess.
But can we list both of them, that the who would be both the TAC and the executive board? Rather than just have to go to the TAC and then the TAC goes to the, but, because our recommendation is that it wind up with the executive
I'm
board.
not an attorney, so I don't know how to answer that
Yeah,
question.
that's true.
But at any rate, that would be my suggestion.
Well, I think since it says that we are a subcommittee of the TAC, we want to urge the executive board of SIMPO. I think you're right. That's what I would prefer, putting in there urges the executive board of SIMPO. Because it already mentions the TAC that we're working under them and you're their representative.
True,
So-
but it would need to be put forth by the TAC.
Oh, I see. Well, but we're urging the TAC to urge
So we would
That's
say
what I mean,
Central-
we're putting both.
The central committee, I was just about ready to say,
urges the TAC to recommend this to the board, I guess.
to the executive board. Yeah, recommends to the TAC to.
Dan, would we have
present
any trouble with this going forward? Do we have to come to the TAC meeting and?
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't hurt, but I can also speak, on behalf, I'm certainly not a formal representative of this committee. I'm just a liaison, but I can share the thoughts that are being discussed here today and make it clear what.
So
the
that was,
intent of the
so
executive is.
if we come to speak in favor of this going forward to the executive, that was the August meeting, which is,
August TAC meeting.
Didn't they just have one? Oh, the August TAC meeting, not the,
No, there's not one.
not the executive board.
yeah,
So yeah, they'll both, they send us the agenda, so.
okay.
Are there any other suggestions or? And then if someone wants to make a motion to approve with the proposed changes
I'm making a motion to approve
with,
with the recommended changes.
Second.
okay, all those in favor say aye,
Hi.
opposed, none, okay. That's good.
Yeah,
Next
that's
item.
well written. I like the way all that's.
Yeah, good job, Lindsay.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your input.
Okay, item number 8, review and discussion of the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report and Environmental Overview Project. Lindsay,
Thank you. Give me a moment and I'll pull up the website. And move my little.
Oh, good. It's finally on.
Yeah.
Web.
So, if you've been following along with our Sundog Connector project, this is a DCR, a design concept report. So we've been seeing a lot of misunderstandings in chat around the community that this is a design for an engineering level design that powers that be are choosing between 4 set paths already, that this is already ready for construction. This is just the design concept report. So keyword there is concept, like when you have a concept car on a showroom floor. It's to spark interest and see how we want to develop the actual corridor if the decision makers want to move forward. The environmental overview piece of this is not a full NEPA review. That would come in an engineering level design as well. So this is an overview. The Sundog Connector webpage is a part of our simpo.org website. So you'll see the web address there at the top, but it's also always a header in our webpage right now. So the Sundog Connector info will get you to what's essentially similar information to the latest newsletter. Our June newsletter is due out this week. You'll notice first that we've got the Sundog brand developed by our partners at AECom, and then information to get to the 2 project managers. So me, Lindsay Post, transportation planner at Simpo. I am the project manager for Simpo staff. And then we are working with our consulting partner. The project manager there is Matt Bondi, and he's been attending our meetings live. So having him on board has been really great. So what's happened so far is on May 10th, we had a kickoff where we all met together with the Sundog Technical Advisory Committee, which we're calling the STAC, and with AECom. And then on June the 3rd, it was a Friday, we had our first stakeholder meeting. It was very well attended by a very diverse group of representatives who are stakeholders in this area. So that would include the utility companies, emergency responders, such as CAFMA and Prescott City Police, and firefighters. There is a radio tower in this area, so those stakeholders were represented. Arizona State Land was represented. Yavapai Hills developer, as well as the homeowners association representatives, as well as just representatives from the public were there. So it was really successful, really informative. So what's happening now is I'll show you the timeline. right now, you'll see in May through August, what the team is working on now is existing and future conditions analysis. So during the month of May, they did traffic counts to take advantage of the traffic while school was still in session, to give us a more accurate picture of what traffic looks like. And so they're also gathering all kinds of other traffic patterns, turn analysis, things like that. So you can always keep track of where we are in the project by referencing this timeline. The various representatives in the STAC group help address the various tasks that our consultant has created as part of the scope of work for the design concept. And so you'll see some important documents. You'll have the links to the stakeholder meeting. One thing where I'd love to see if you'd like to engage is in the engagement exercise. Deb, can you see Sundog Connector PowerPoint? Or is it still on the simple? Okay,
Yes, I can.
awesome. And pardon me while I scroll. I'm gonna just get to the engagement. I just want to give you an idea of the kinds of things that we discussed and the input we received. And I'll go with that. So, one way, the first question that we engaged with was, what is your greatest concern or question about the potential Sundog connector? And what we did is we had time to put our questions on a sticky wall. So nobody was put on the spot. Nobody had to say something that could be perceived as negative in front of the whole group. Everybody got to be completely transparent with what their concerns and questions were. So if you have any questions about the specific feedback that we received, I can get with AECom. They've put together a sort of a document on our frequently made points here. So you can either engage with me here today or write your questions to me and your answers in an email. That's always welcome as well.
So we can ask you the questions that they condensed and prioritized and categorized
Yeah.
on the board.
Yeah, I can send everybody the categories of the sort of feedback that we're getting. It is a lot of, because of who was represented at
Because I
the,
missed that meeting for some reason.
it was first of all, it was beginning of summer. So
Right.
folks' kids were just out, that's always hard. And then there was a planning thing in Phoenix that took a lot of the stakeholders that would be there to Phoenix for some workshops. So that was just a matter of timing.
Would we could be getting the schedule of the meetings that will be held up here if we wanted to attend?
Absolutely. I would love to add you to my list for distribution.
Yeah, I'd like to be added to that list too. Lindsay?
Thank you. I'll go ahead and add EMAC to that list. Most of you are already on it, so that should cover everybody else. I'd be happy to do that. So if the Sundog connector were never constructed, what would be the most impactful impact or concern on the regional public? What I liked about this question is because of the diverse representation, there were answers like no animals would be hit in that corridor, logically. And then there was, because of who was represented in other areas, how will 69 be impacted if this were never built? So it was a really, really great diverse set of viewpoints for that. And so it was really helpful to the consultant team.
Can I just, because I know I've shared with Vinny, but on that Hidden Valley next door, which is, there had been a lot of comment from the homeowners in that community, and they scheduled meetings and whatever, but I'd imagine that you've got them linked in so that they're officially represented.
Yes,
Because
and
it varied from, not in our neighborhood to the fact that on the positive side, it would prevent people who currently have to drive through the neighborhood in an emergency and getting out, so.
well, that's exactly what one of the concerns was. It's already the peak of their response time to get to the very north end of Yavapai Hills, for example. And what would that look like, in future congestion? So that was a concern. If it was never constructed, perhaps that response time would increase.
And Chair, if I can too, I just want to thank JD for sharing that with me, and I shared it with Lindsay, and we have been going through it, JD, and I would would encourage anyone that is connected in the community and gets feedback, please relay that to us. We want more feedback than not. So JD, there was a lot of comments in there. And it does help Lindsay and I continue to get information out. So obviously we're not gonna, respond to each of the people and each of the comments, but I've already talked to Lindsay about, what are some of the main themes? What are some of the main misconceptions that continue to be out there? And in the next newsletter and in the next meeting, we've already made some notes to really hit on some things. I think the biggest theme that I keep hearing is this is a done deal. This is a done project. We're breaking ground anytime now. And again, I keep reminding everyone, just this design concept report is going to take us all the way to the end of calendar year next year. And at that point, it's up to the decision makers if they want to move forward. If they want to move forward, the next stage is the design, which will take about a year. So that takes us to the end of calendar year 24. And in that time, there still has to be funding identified for the road. So, this project's anywhere $40 million plus. And if you're following transportation and funding, the money is just not there at this point. So, best case scenario, if someone wanted this to go forward, we're still years away from breaking ground, but there's a lot of steps that have to happen. There was a lot of environmental comments, and we appreciate those, and we want to address and try and propose ideas for the consideration of not only that Hidden Valley group, but all people. So again, just appreciate it, JD. Thanks for sharing that.
But, have you contacted them? Because it might be very easing for their concerns if you were allowed to attend some of their organization's meetings.
We have not contacted them directly, but I will definitely talk to Lindsay about doing that.
Because they could be a positive force in the whole project as well. And obviously they're very invested in what happens.
I won't say, I'm sorry, real quick, one thing, there was a lot of reference about the survey that was put out there. As far as I know, the gentleman that put the survey together lives in Yavapai Hills. He did attend the stakeholder meeting. And forgive me if I get some of the information wrong, but I do believe he put the survey together, and I thought at his own cost, he also mailed it out with a stamp for everybody to return the survey. But he was fully present at the stakeholder meeting. He was active. We talked afterwards, and again, put out a survey of their own initiative about this particular project. So I think we do have some key people that are in that group, JD, in plugged into other parts of it. I know Dan Prisick, I believe he's watching the meeting. He was representing the Homeowners Association. He's been actively involved. Joanne Wellers from Save the Dells, I believe she's watching currently. She was at the stakeholder meeting. So with that said, we'll continue engagement, but we do have some real key people representing groups, and I appreciate their participation.
It's kind of an education process for them because, until you're involved in some way with SIMPO, with ADOT, when things are brought up for construction, you think, oh my gosh, they're going to, just like you said, that they're going to break ground next week.
Yeah.
They need to understand that these things take at least 5 years really to get to that point.
Right. And I think, to your point, the thing that you can't teach anybody or make them do is care. And these people who are in the chat clearly care. So that step's already taken care of. So I do think reaching out to them in a impactful way is a good move.
And I want to throw this too, because I do know that I've received a few emails again about past studies have shown that this road would be necessary at a certain population threshold that we haven't achieved yet. But one of the reasons we're continuing to go down this path is what was just said, is these things do take a long time. Just again, a reminder, this particular road has been in discussions for 28 years now. So, I'm giving you a process. Somebody just said maybe 5 years from now. You know, there are things, and Dan, Sherry can tell you, projects in transportation that we set out to do, and we're talking this 10-year window. And that's the reason we continue to move these things forward. We just know that they can take a long time. And I know I get challenged a lot. We haven't reached certain thresholds, but we need to keep trying to move forward, because before we know it, we are going to reach those. And that's why we're trying to jump through some of these hoops. So I appreciate that comment.
And I think to that end, this question would be especially beneficial to ask that group and homeowners. You know, if it were to be guaranteed to be built, which we all have established it's not, what type of roadway and features would be most desirable? And in that chat, and the chat we're referring to, everybody, is a Nextdoor chat about this subject. Because I am not esteemed enough to live here in the community yet, I can't get access to that chat except for some very basic information. So that's the reason why I only know initials of those people who chatted. I don't even know their names because I'm not fully allowed to see that chat. So that's what we're referring to. And I think they have some ideas. In the chat, they actually had some ideas saying, look, guys, if this is guaranteed, we at least have some time to say what we want to happen with this road. Chuck.
Would it be of value for EMAC to, as a group, comment on these questions?
Well, we're gonna be looking at the answers and taking them in consideration. That's, I mean, you can't, as a member of the public.
Right, but I'm just thinking that EMAC as a dedicated group to SIMPO and the executive board through the TAC actually come out and maybe say some things about if Sundog Connector was guaranteed to be built, what type of roadway and features. Obviously, wildlife corridors, crossings, fencing, you know, those kinds of things, not design the whole thing, just
Assured that those elements would be considered.
that's what I'm kind of thinking, that the weight of our committee would help with the next doors and whoever else is on the list. I don't know who's on the list either,
But since we're a recommending body to the TAC, as part of it, we're already getting input as a group, as reviewing the document and everything that comes out. So
well,
we don't have
yeah.
to answer these questions because we're taking the input they're getting from these questions and incorporating it and making sure everything's addressed from EMAC and has another set of eyes, make sure all their concerns are being addressed.
We could also prioritize based on what we see, because it's more likely that those are already captured in some way, the comments that we would want to
Most
make.
likely, yes. I
So
would
maybe
agree.
that's the way.
I would agree with that. And I know it's a little repetitious and I know it kind of bogs us down a little, but I think in view of some of JD's comments, we should probably have our stamp of approval on certain concepts and ideas. I'm just saying, I don't know what the rest of the group thinks.
Let's see if anybody has a comment.
You know, the one thing too is that by doing that and letting them know that we're gonna be looking at those concerns, it will hopefully that would take the pressure off of the rest of you and be a positive thing. I mean, I would imagine that some of the, local public works people are gonna be getting a whole, onslaught of complaints or whatever. But if we could help them understand what we're gonna be looking at and the safety issues that we're gonna try and address, it might take some of the heat off of you guys.
So, as a public body, I'm not sure EMAC should be engaging as a committee, but that doesn't mean you can't individually participate as representatives of EMAC. Does that make sense?
Not necessarily like going on and making a comment on Nextdoor. I don't think that's appropriate. But again, restating that we will be actively involved in the whole review process.
Right.
And have that on the SIMPO website so that if if those people, those residents or anyone else in the community is, making all these complaints and having all these concerns, we at least can direct them to the SIMPA website where they will see that there is a provision for us and for the TAC to be making, the recommendations that would address their concerns. So I don't see us going on the next door.
Okay, all right, I was misunderstanding that, so I think discussion of those things here, this is a public meeting here, we'll have minutes associated with it, this is something that is going to be, out there for digestion by the public. That is the purpose of this committee here, and then you all make recommendations to the TAC, and in turn that gets recommended to the executive board.
And when we get to that point, we can advertise to some of these groups that we will, that we will have, when the meetings will be, that we will be looking at those things so that they can provide public comment.
Agreed, but I think that's also part of the stakeholder meetings and the public meetings that are associated specifically with this project. The public will be invited to be participants in as well.
Yeah.
And that's where they give.
That I'm not sure you need necessarily to have specific discussion or agenda items here at the EMAG meeting specific to that project. We want membership from the EMAG to be involved in that project as a stakeholder, and I think that's the intent of the stakeholder community that was built, and the stack. So
Don't get me clear, I don't want us to, like our email to go out and be.
No, and that, we can't do that, but basically, those public meetings, that's what they're for the public to voice their
Right.
concerns, and they capture it as the consultants and bring it forward. So we're gonna have this probably as a standing item in our agenda, so as there's new information produced, then we're gonna review it and comment on it from EMAC standpoint. But the public meetings are the places for the public to comment, not at our meetings.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
So,
And can I just, because I think that's important for any of the people who do attend our meetings, that they know where and when and which is the appropriate manner in which for them to give their input. That it isn't our committee, it's the public meetings, just what you said.
Yeah, so then they'll be directed to the website that has all those meetings listed there.
and we'll also make that, Allison and I already discussed having that in that calendar of events just for SIMPA overall, where we see these meetings as well. So we're trying to make sure. And then I just want to bring, I'm gonna allow Joanne Allers to talk if she wants to, who did I just say? So she had a really great point. I suggest expanding your Facebook page instead of engaging in Nextdoor, which is difficult to monitor. Isn't AECom doing outreach? So yes, good point, Joanne. And just so you know, I've allowed you to talk if you need to. The public involvement plan, the final draft just went out to the TAC for approval. And so, yes, you're right. A great deal of the public involvement is done by AECom. Kate Bondi is the public engagement project manager there. So yes, and I also think engaging in Nextdoor is fraught. It's very, I described it to Vinny as kind of Real Housewives-ish. I don't want to get in tit for tat. It's just, I can't stop the way that they feel, and that's not beneficial. So I think that comment, Joanne, is the right way to go about this as far as engaging in, the conversations that might be having. It's more just to address them in those types of ways rather than tit for tat on Nextdoor. I really like that.
Yes, may I say something then?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yes, and Facebook is viewed as like a semi-professional platform these days. I think that it could be used effectively to mirror what you have on your website. Many people will just go to Facebook first to look for stuff, and so that might just be another way for you to think about it. And yes, you want to be able to monitor everything, which has really good controls for that. So thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you.
Just to reiterate, you guys are maintaining a list of email addresses. So anybody that wants to have active information about, when there will be public meetings. And they don't even necessarily have to go to the website. There'll be an email burst that'll go out and make announcements as these meetings are upcoming. So that is, we've all been very concerned about how robust the public outreach arm of this project is, and that public information plan, is that correct?
But yeah,
Is, currently, open for public comment, and we've, I know our office has provided a little feedback on it, and so we welcome that from anybody that's involved with the stakeholders. So please, if you're concerned, take a look, give some feedback to Lindsay, and if you're not on the email list already, get your email into Lindsay and she'll add you, and that is probably the best way to stay informed as far as upcoming opportunity to be involved.
and so far, just so you know, I have not gatekeeped anybody. If somebody from the public asked to be on my stakeholder list, I put them on the stakeholder list. So far, that has not caused any problems. Our last stakeholder meeting was attended by members of the public, and they were extremely professional and engaging and mature about it all. There was no fight or anything. So
May I ask a question?
please.
Dan, it's been a long time since I've been to one of the TAC meetings pre-COVID, but I can't remember a time when there was kind of this type of interaction with the public on the technical advisory committee. I mean, you allow people to come in and speak, but is it set up in such a way that encourages people to give input on any of the TAC?
So the TAC meetings have a call to the public element as part of every agenda. And then of course, if there's a specific item on there that the public would like to address the TAC on, that's certainly invited as well.
Because I just think that if there is a system or a model that the TAC has used in the past, or the executive committee for that matter, we should be aligned with that kind of a model.
I think your agenda mirrors that as it is, so I think you're in good shape on that. This has call the public as item number 3 right here on the agenda that gets mimicked for the TAC as well as for the executive board.
And nowadays that pretty much follows what the Board of Supervisors do and what city councils do too. So but again, just to have that information available.
Yeah, and
For
certainly-
items not on the agenda.
For the items not on the agenda.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other information about the Sundog connector?
I don't think so. As we just discussed, any updates you'll get as a whole group right away as soon as we give them. So no need to have to try to, search through and find. If anybody wants to be on the distribution list, please do just give them my contact information, and that's that. So from me, nothing else on the Sundog connector.
Okay. Item number 9, review and discussion of the State Route 69 urbanized corridor master plan. Vinnie and Lindsay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'll quickly kick it over to Lindsay on this, just again, a brief reminder how we got to where we're at in some of these studies. So we had a strategic retreat with the EMAC, the TAC, and the executive board and staff last summer. The primary discussion at that annual retreat was our major planning projects for the next 5 years, which are reflected in our TIP, or our Transportation Improvement Program. If you remember, we went through an exercise, staff made recommendations, presentations, and long story short, the consensus of the group was that our year 1 project, which we're coming to an end now, is the Sundog Connector, which we just talked about. There was a close second, which was the State Route 69 Master Corridor Plan. There was discussion that they could have been reversed. We could have started with 69 and then went on to Sundog, but this is where the consensus came in. There is still a very strong belief, probably throughout many of you, especially the executive board, Again, that a priority and a focus should remain on 69 versus possibly even the Sundog discussion. I have a strong opinion that I want to provide as much information to you, the TAC and the board as possible, which the Sundog connector and the State Route 69 plan will do that. It is my hope, along with Lindsay, that we're going to deliver both of these projects, the Sundog, which we just talked about, and this project that Lindsay's going to launch into here in just a moment of the State Route 69 Master Corridor Plan. I want to have the results of both of these studies and these plans completed by the end of calendar year 23. And what that will do is that will allow a decision by the region, is the priority and is the investment on the State Route 69 corridor and or Sundog connector. It could be one or the other, it could be both. But right now we do not have enough information on either project to really make a very strong recommendation. So I want everyone to understand, again, we're still at very much of a planning stage. We're at the earliest possible stage. This project that Lindsay's about to go into great detail with you about is we are going to be issuing out a request for proposals, or essentially we're looking for a consultant to help us with about a 12-month process to evaluate the State Route 69 corridor, which again is going to run from in Prescott with the intersection of State Route 89 at the base of where the Prescott Resort is. And then it's going to go east all the way to the intersection of 169 in Dewey Humboldt, or on the border with Prescott Valley. It's a 15.5-mile corridor. At its highest points has about 45,000 cars a day. We're all incredibly familiar with this highway. We have had many discussions in the past about it. It definitely is a priority for all people for all sorts of reasons: traffic, environment, congestion, safety. So what the intent of this study is, that Lindsay will explain a little bit more, is we're going to really break down this highway and look at what improvements are able to be done on the road to improve safety and capacity. That includes what this mission of this group is, which is the environment, and especially where wildlife and traffic intersects. We recognize there's many segments of this road where there's already many wildlife collisions. We recognize that this state route is incredibly built in many ways at some points to capacity. So again, our consultant really has a challenge, whoever we hire, to really bring forward some very innovative suggestions. Clearly, we know one of them is going to be, well, widen the highway. That seems to be an ongoing discussion. Part of that, again, is funding and what that looks like. And here's the last thing I'll use. I've repeated this many times, but again, to put improvements in context, we're doing a 1-mile widening in front of Lowe's from Prescott Lakes Parkway to Yavapai Road. It has, when all is said and done, it will have taken about 10 years from the start of the discussion to identifying the funds to design and construction. It's just finishing the design. It's going to go out for bid. We're at about year 8.5. The construction will take about a year, and that's a 1-mile segment to widen the road. Cost about $13 million to do that. So we're talking 15.5-mile corridor. Many of the comments I've received objecting to Sundog Connector have said, don't build this road, improve 69. Part of me, again, doesn't fully disagree that a priority is on 69, but I would tell our decision makers and all the public listening, again, easier said than done. It just requires an incredible lift. But with that said, this study will give us the information we need to know what improvements need to happen. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Lindsay. Lindsay, you could run through the details of what the TAC and the executive board have approved to date.
Okay, so on your screen, you should see the cover page for our solicitation. The first thing I want to bring your attention to is going to be the schedule. We, working with our planner, our regional planner, Myrna Bondoc at ADOT, we realized that we cannot solicit until the start of state fiscal year. So the first change you're gonna want to make note of, that will be that will go on the final solicitation, is that issue date. So July 1st is the issue date. That will extend the due date to the end of July, July 29th. And so that gives 4 weeks for potential agencies to propose on this project. So I'll go ahead and keep moving through. I'm gonna just keep scrolling. The changes that you'll notice are going to be related only to the date. The only other changes that would be made at this point are simply for proofreading. And that's because our executive board has already approved the scope of work. And our attorney has approved the scope of work. So the scope starts on page 4 of the solicitation. And you'll notice some things that are pretty standard in most scopes of work. Kickoff is always a standard. And that can't happen until a notice to proceed has been issued. So they'll start by obtaining and reviewing existing data. As you know, if you've been following along with SIMPO's work, there are some studies that have already come out that can help inform this study. So for example, the inventory of crosswalks that are both marked and unmarked that people cross in our Quad City areas, bike lanes, curbs, ramps, some of that data already exists. And so in developing this scope, I wanted to take note of areas where the chosen consultant can piggyback off of. So you'll see there transportation modeling and analysis. We also worked to make sure that our district engineer, Anthony Brozich, and Andy Roth had a chance to make comment on this. So their input mostly relates to right-of-way and access management. If you are familiar with the route, which I'm sure you are, there's very little right-of-way to be had. In fact, I think there's none to be had. So, the roads go right up to development and things. So what this scope outlines is that one of the deliverables will be prioritization of the segments. So that's sort of already happened with the project that Vinny has just described, the 1 mile widening. That can be thought of as sort of one segment. And so one of the deliverables that we hope this consultant can bring is helping us to prioritize segments or locations where we need to start first and right away, not right of way. And as you already know, certainly because you're a member of the traveling public, there are segments that are already 3 lanes and there are segments that are still 2. And so it's a constant 2 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 2 and 3. And so that adds to it. An area where we worked a lot with our partners in Prescott Valley is item G, urbanized public transit, which is 5307 through the FTA. And so it's really important that we consider the multimodal connectivity aspect of this corridor, especially because Prescott Valley is a recipient of about $1.8 million in 5307 funds that we can help utilize in areas just like this. So with the Yava line coming on board and some other potential partners, as well as the newly designated IPTA designation that our area just received, it's really important that we get ahead of analyzing some 5307 corridor evaluation. Below that, you'll notice freight. Because of its the corridor's identification in the National Freight Corridor Network, that is a very important piece here. And how will adjacent development, industry, commercial zoning impact freight on this corridor? And then you'll notice, and I'm sorry I keep bouncing, but in item E, one thing to keep in mind is that we're asking our consultant to give us some build scenarios for SR 69 based on if Sundog connector goes through. So we'll have to do a little bit of analysis of how that would impact this study. And then how would the impact, what would the impacts be if Sundog did not move forward. Is there gonna be an increase in traffic on 69 and how are we gonna model that? And so those are the things that we're asking of the consultant that we choose for this project. Public involvement is a little less involved, a lot less involved, I'd say, than Sundog Connector. About a quarter of the effort and budget for Sundog Connector is going toward public involvement, and that won't be the case here. And I think it just makes sense with the optics for Sundog Connector that we have a lot of involvement. We of course want involvement in all of our projects, but it comes with a cost. So that's why you'll see the plan we have for public involvement at item I. One public meeting, one stakeholder meeting, and then they'll do social media and digital engagement. And we'll work with partners, basically our municipal partners, to also use their social media. And the Smart Road ITS architecture, basically, we're just trying to provide for analysis of electric vehicle connectivity and what that can do for us, as well as the signal, advanced traffic signal study that was just conducted by Burgess and Michael. My thoughts for environmental overview are shown there on item K. And so I hope, it is sufficient for you, though I did work a lot with Dan and other members of the TAC to develop this piece. So I'm just sort of hoping that we can use that wildlife crossing study that just came out through ADOT and learn a little bit more about how to mitigate the wildlife crossing and environmental impacts. And then finally, implementation and deliverables. This will be we want a 10% planning level design. So there's a level at which it becomes an engineering level design, and you'll see that 15% design for high priority segments that we hope that they'll identify for us. That's when we'll hope to get a 15% level design level so that we can start to move forward with alternatives if that's the way forward. So Madam Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
Yeah, the title has urbanized in it because it's gonna be land used for commercial and industrial or government office buildings and stuff.
No, so you're related to item G, 5307 urbanized.
Well, the scope of work.
Oh, the whole title
The
of
reason the
the,
whole title is there is urbanized. Is there a designation like you can get more funds for an urbanized area? But will that change the land use planning for the area and the designation of what the land is like?
No.
Because there's some big creeks and stuff like that run parallel to the road.
Right.
So,
This won't affect any of the land use plans for the areas. This is an urban area, so it is an urbanized
yeah, that's a census
area.
designation.
yeah, I'm
So-
just wondering why the word urbanized instead of improvement corridor.
Because that's a very common planning term, because this is an
Urbanized.
urban area, it's not a rural area, like if you're going from 169 further east for mayor and stuff, that'd be more of a rural corridor. But this is an urban area because they're designated cities and towns and it's along commercial corridors.
Right, so that could significantly impact the use of wildlife corridors and crossings.
Okay,
So
interesting.
I don't want to change it, obviously. I'm not saying that to change it. I'm just saying it to make an observation.
That's a good observation.
With all this terminology, since that area is a freight corridor, that doesn't need to be in an urbanized freight corridor master plan,
I think it says that, doesn't it?
but it's not in the title.
Under H,
But it's within the scope.
But since you were talking about the title of the whole project,
I don't think we should put freight in the title just because it's only a very small segment of why we're planning this. So we're not planning, there actually is an entire, they just started it at ADOT, freight plan. specific to the commodities moving through our state and on our roads. So I'm not sure that the freight would work there.
Because I thought that the fact that it is a freight corridor gives it a higher priority for funding and for construction, but
I think the term urbanized does that, correct? Am I correct in assuming that?
Vinny, did you have any comment on that? I don't know if you're still at your desk or not, but I don't think we can mess with the use of the term urbanized just because of the FTA designation, but what do you think about that?
No, I don't want to.
And I think it goes back to Tammy's comment. I mean, and I would just add to it, for this particular corridor, it's rooted in a census designated urbanized area. SIMPO's designation, the heart of it is the urbanized area of the town of Prescott and Prescott Valley. So it's more kind of logistics than anything. I get that there's other, things happening in this particular corridor. So the urbanized doesn't do anything more than acknowledge SIMPO's urban designation through Prescott and Prescott Valley. And then as far as the freight goes, a little bit of what you said, yeah, freight will be a portion of it, but not the only portion of it. So all those points are fair. I don't believe that either designation will or will not, prohibit us from a comprehensive study and access to other opportunities for grant support.
just, I throw things out. If they stick, fine. If they don't,
That's what we need.
no problem.
Right.
The last thing I
So,
wanted to, yeah, go
Do
ahead.
you want us to read this and review it? I mean, not necessarily.
No,
the
it's already
scope of
been
work.
approved.
The scope of work has been approved.
The whole solicitation has,
Oh,
they
the whole
approved that at the last
solicitation
executive board
has.
meeting,
Oh.
yeah. So the last thing I wanted to show you here was that we made a change to the timeline based on what we just said about the solicitation. So here on your screen, you should see an accurate representation of our plan moving forward. The solicitation will hit the streets on July 1st and open for about 4 weeks. Then the TAC will begin to review the submittals. By October 5th, that's when we can go to the Board of Supervisors, who's our fiscal agent, so that we can issue the notice to proceed. And what that'll do for us is it's about a 12-month timeline, putting us right at the end, right in fall of 2023, which is right about when Sundial Connector ends as well. So we've got some materials to work with in edification and education of our public and our decision makers. And then by then, I'm hoping that we have some options to provide based on our work and research together on some partnerships and solutions for wildlife corridors, some, like I said in here, funnel fencing. And together over the next now maybe 16 months, we'll be working on that as a team. So I'll just open it up from here for any questions, Madam Chair.
And Lindsay, if I can go back to Chuck's comment, you all have had the opportunity actually to give some input already to the draft scope. Lindsay brought this to you at your last meeting. You've offered some ideas. So she's tried to reflect that in the scope. You've had comments to it. More than anything, what Lindsay and I are wanting to do today is what we've heard from you over and over again, which is give you a chance sooner than later. There's nothing worse than you all feel like everything's been done. So we're telling you that our goal is to get a consultant on board in October. Here we are in June, so you still have plenty of time. We don't have a consultant on board yet, but we want you to start the discussion now as to what comments, questions, input you have for the 69 corridor. We will officially kick it off in October. Again, you'll be invited to that kickoff as EMAC. You'll be able to participate. But again, we want to give you the proactive opportunity to start the discussions. So that way you don't hit Lindsay and I and say, hey, we never had a chance. So please start the discussion now as to what things you want to see in this corridor, what's a priority to EMAC. More than that, start bringing some real answers to the problems. Lindsay just mentioned a couple things. What'd you say, Lindsay? Funnel fencing and a few other things. So whatever those are that you believe are strong, reasonable recommendations for this corridor, start it now. So just trying to give you all a heads up is what we're trying to do today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm assuming there will be a stakeholder group associated with that project as well. And EMAC will probably have some representation on it.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody? Nope. Okay. Last item on the agenda, 10. Review, discussion, and possible action regarding the pursuit of funding for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act.
So in your packet, I have included the section for specific to wildlife crossings. And there was a specific section on collision reduction. So I hope I gave you enough time, though these can be pretty hairy to read through because they're very technical. But I hope I've given you enough time to sort of read through this and glean if there's any opportunities for us to pursue in this. I personally did see a few of my own, but I wondered if anything popped out to you guys as you were reading through this, or if there's a separate discussion you'd like to have about this area. So basically, IIJA, the funding that we might be able to identify through for here, you know, you saw the eligible partners, you can see it right there as well. Not only are they eligible partners, but these are the eligible applicants. So MPOs, unit of local government, the tribe, a transportation authority, a special purpose district, like a taxing district. So these are the eligible entities, and then the eligible partners that we could work with. So state land is an eligible partner. And so if we find an area to pursue for funding in this section of the IIJA bill, then that would be done either by SIMPO or maybe with a consulting partner getting us, you know, the draft of the application for us, or maybe it's one of our partner municipality local governments. So I just want to open the floor to discussion on this item and see if there's any discussion points that you all had on this.
Well, first of all, the second page, it says that we are eligible to receive a grant under a pilot program.
Right.
Maybe we should start
Yeah,
incrementally at the first.
well, that's really
Because
smart.
for an urbanized corridor that we're planning, we might want to get some funding for review of where wildlife actually migrates and goes to and why and all that kind of stuff. And maybe some designs in that pilot study.
That's
So-
exactly what I'm kind of hoping for.
Bringing in that kind of stuff. And I know there's other funding in here.
Yeah.
There's also funding that the Forest Service can get. They're not here today. There's funding, of course, it may not help us directly, but it may help with actual wildlife connectivity. But yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. So we have time to review this. I mean, you're not expecting for us to make comment today.
Possible action regarding the pursuit of funding. So I guess that's if
Pursuit of funding.
we find that this is pursuable.
Yes. we find
Um,
that this is pursuable.
Yeah, and I think it's wise to keep in mind that this is federal, so the whole timeline is shifted. October 1 is the beginning of a federal calendar.
Yeah.
And then what would happen is it's very unlikely that I can already tell you, because I'm already panicking at the thought of October, is that there's nothing I could do before October. This would be getting our ducks in a row for when they would issue a NOPO for next year, which is around this time next year. So,
Mhm.
and it makes sense. I mean, as we all know, these projects like SR 69 widening is taking 10 years. So yeah, hopefully it won't take that long, but we're setting ourselves up for the future. So we're not behind in any way. There is also a bit of a larger section dedicated to, maybe it's not, maybe it's smaller, specifically environmental and climate change concerns. And so I wonder if anybody's willing to read that as well. I'd be happy to send it out. But there might be a way, something for us to pursue here, but I feel like the passions, the interests, the concerns in this group more relate to connectivity for wildlife.
Right. Yeah, if you could send that to me,
Sure, yeah, thank you.
the climate thing.
Well, the way that ties in with wildlife, because when we have the climate change and they don't have water.
And they're all desperate for it.
Well, and hardscapes versus landscapes and vegetation scapes and all that kind of stuff. You know, you have a lot of landscapes, you're not gonna have a lot of wildlife.
Right.
And given the first resolution we look at, that seems like an important element to all this.
Vinny, was there anything you wanted to add on this section, in general?
So are you looking for us to recommend approval of looking at options for?
I think that's, yeah,
Yeah, my only comment, again, this kind of goes to our theme throughout the last couple meetings is Lindsay and I, as a small staff, we're really looking for some help here. We know the passion of this particular committee. We share it with you. We are just so strapped in our staff time to be able to dive into all the opportunities. This is where this as a group becomes an incredible primary working group. You know, we just, there's no way for us to act on your recommendations because we're already consumed with work. So this is where we need you to help us do some staff work. You dive into what opportunities are out there, do the research, bring the bullet points to us, meet with Lindsay and I and say, look, I really think we have an opportunity here, and explain why. Why are some of these grants, how do they apply to this area? How are they eligible? Again, within reason of what it's being asked of us. We don't expect you to be, you know, grant experts or planning experts, but we do need you to do some real research on our behalf and to do some of that initial footwork in order to bring it again to Lindsay and I and say, you know, guys, I think we found something that could really work on the Sundog connector. It could work on Great Western or the 69 corridor, whatever it is, we really challenge you to do that for us. And again, it's not to highlight something and say, hey, read this, but you know, to do all that initial work is going to be critical. So here's your opportunity. Chuck and others have said, again, there are a big amount of opportunities now through the infrastructure bill, in particular for environment, wildlife, and transportation related. We just haven't had a chance to dive into those opportunities. So I hope that you could help us with it.
Go ahead, JD.
There are two things. Number one, I have a Windows 7 computer.
I hear you.
So I finally bought a new one, and for a while, I put a security system on it since I'm not covered by Microsoft anymore, and it blocked everything. So for the past like 2 weeks, I've been without a computer. So then finally I get the computer, for someone to come over and fix my computer, take all the security stuff off and just introduce one. And then this weekend, the internet went down with CenturyLink. So it came on yesterday about 3 o'clock. And when I went on this morning to look at all this, it's down again. So at times, I've got two things. Is it possible if I run into glitches like this, that if I take on some of this, that I could maybe come to the office and at Simpo and use the computer? And then secondly, because of all of the restrictions or guidelines or whatever about how many of us can meet together to do anything. I mean, like if Chuck and I want to get together and work on something with some of the people in the community on one of these issues, what do we need to know? What is allowed?
So several things, good points in there, JD. So what I would say is you are more than welcome to come into our office. We're more than happy to set up a station for you to be able to work at, use our computer. You're more than welcome to print out things as it relates to EMAC and this particular topic. That's number one. Number two, Lindsay would be more than happy to print out hard copy. If there are materials that you would rather have printed out, read, highlight, she is more than happy to print those materials out for you and have them available for you. Number three, and I'll let some others chime in. This is, I guess, would be my take on open meeting laws. it's the heart of open meeting laws is that the business of the taxpayer is done in the open and in transparency. And at the heart of it, it's when this particular group is making a action and a decision. I know there's other elements to it, but that's really the core of it. So in my opinion, it would be that, you know, if you and or Chuck were working together and maybe some other people to do the research, I'll step out here on a branch and Dan help me out, or Tammy, you can help me out. I don't feel that in any way violates an open meeting law. They're gathering information. They're not making a decision that this particular group is going through. So I don't see a conflict there, but I'll let Dan back me up on that if you have any input, or Tammy.
I agree.
I agree.
Yep, there you go.
And I love it. That means we can do some work together.
Yeah.
Do some work together, and however we can help with the resources, JD, if it's computer or technology or printing, we're more than happy to do that.
Because I really would like to bring some of the people who have been interested in this committee. You know, Joanne's one, we've got Jenny Cobb. Jeff is certainly a mainstay for this committee. So that's good to know that we can get together and work on this.
Yeah, it's important, especially when you're reading such, you know, technical.
Yeah. Because
So when you found this and printed it off, all you did you just Google public law 117-58, or how did you get to here?
Well, because of my job, I constantly have the IIJA in its full entirety on my desktop at all times to be able to. And so I did a search in the document to find the right chapter. But that is in a way that I've gotten a lot of information on how other states have done it, is a simple Google search.
Yeah.
Where that led me to was a question for you all, and this might sound silly, but because I'm from the Southwest and I've lived in various parts of it, when and where do the tarantulas cross in this area, for example?
oh, that's really it. It's usually just the
Do we
males
have
that
any?
cross. Because
Yeah,
they're
you should,
out
because
looking
they go
for
mating.
females.
Yeah, and so the only reason I bring it up is because the zoo, we already discussed how that could be a potential partnership. Maybe they'd want to help sponsor a corridor or a project or an education campaign, but they also have that spider exhibit, which I refuse to go to, but I do care about spiders from way over here. And so the matter of, tarantulas, just, I woke up in the middle of the night going, where do they come in Prescott? And how can the Heritage Zoo care about that? Because that's one of the main parts of their exhibits is the
They go
spider
through the
exhibit.
culverts.
Yeah.
They do. I stopped on Hazley Road and held up traffic for one to go across.
I love it.
Tarantula?
Yeah.
Really? I've never seen a
Oh,
tarantula.
I've hiked at full force in that moment where you're about to step on one and you have to like fling your body to not, because you care about a spider.
They're wonderful spiders.
They really are, and they go slow, so they don't scare me.
You just pick them up.
Well,
That's what I do.
That's true. You actually, I haven't, but you can. They're
Yeah.
very
You
gentle.
put your hands out in front of them, they crawl up and you let them down.
I can't trust myself to then just, do that. I don't do that.
They're very kind. and
Yeah.
gentle.
They
I'll
are.
I'll remember that.
All right,
next
so I would like to say that, going back to Chuck's point is, there's likely to be a funding opportunity here. There's likely to be other funding opportunities in the future. The first thing you do is you start with a plan. And if you can establish some kind of historical process by planning efforts, you set yourself up for getting more funding in the future for construction. So what you need to be aiming for here, and Lindsay has touched on this, and Chuck has as well, is get an idea together as to whether we're refreshing an existing plan or whether we're developing a new regional plan for wildlife migration corridors or something like that, so that you are informed and you've established some kind of process going forward, so that when you are ready to chase money for construction dollars or design dollars, you have something to base that on. So, this is a multi-year process. I think this lays out 5 years of funding, if I recall. As far as this program goes, so, you know, if you can get on board with year 1 or 2 with regards to some planning dollars, you know, you're not talking a huge chunk of money up front, and then you're better informed as to move forward with something else. And hopefully at that time, it coincides with some other construction project that's coming along as well. So that's the path of most success, I would say, is rather than saying, well, we got to do a crossing on 69, if we don't know where it is, or we don't know what it entails, it's bound to fail when you go asking for that kind of money. But if you have something to point to when you're chasing those dollars, and maybe even something that, you know, member agencies can get together and pool some resources and put together a quality grant application when it comes to design or construction at some point, then you're setting yourself up for better success.
That's exactly what this is for, is a grant, what you printed off is for. How to write a grant.
Dan, you'd mentioned that before, that, you know, that the county has a lot of success with it. And hearing what Vinny just said about Lindsay's availability, is there the possibility that if some of us get together and try and figure out how we're gonna
2 or
start
3 of
this-
us could
this
meet
plan?
without being, without violating any.
Yeah, because we're not
or-
approving anything, we're just researching.
So 2 or 3 of us could meet and talk about
The whole-
this.
Actually, a whole bunch of us can meet, but I'm thinking that
Right.
No more than 3.
no more than 3, so no
Okay.
more
'Cause then
than
it would be
4,
quorum, yeah.
okay.
That's the
But,
restriction.
But I'm just thinking, since the county has such grant writing expertise,
We hire people to write our grants for us. We don't write the grants.
We know nothing, but I see where you're going, headed though.
We'll-
But we have
we'll
somebody
read-
that's really good at
we'll read
grants
this
coming on
first.
board.
We'll
Okay.
read this first, and it'll become crystal clear to you
Great.
when you read
Us,
this,
okay.
what's gonna happen.
Right.
Even you,
But
we
we-
may have to have coffee sometime and talk about it, but even you can understand.
But we do have somebody coming on board with Simpo. Bryn's really good with grants, and grant writing.
Oh, great.
but I'm listening to what Vinny is saying, and his staff is already fully
Yeah.
committed, so I'm
That
I'm
gives us
thinking,
something
I'm
to do.
trying to think of some other,
But this isn't gonna happen overnight like everything else.
Yeah.
So, but we had to get a plan together to see where, that's what the 69 corridor study will give us, is an idea where we need to be like focusing more on.
well, I'm thinking of, you know, Elizabeth and Jeff are partners at Game and
Francisco.
Fish.
They
Yeah.
will have a part.
Oh, yeah,
They will have a part.
big one.
But as we're studying
This
the
is meant-
69.
This whole transportation thing is meant to have collaboration, is meant to have input, the whole thing is designed for input here, input there, input here, and for all that kind of,
And you're not planning
Collaboration.
to retire anytime soon.
well, no. Yes and
Good
no.
question.
How far out?
Well, even if you were to retire, that doesn't mean you couldn't
I
still
can still be on,
participate.
either be on the board or,
Okay,
you know, guerrilla style
So basically, that's,
meetings.
you guys will get together, and discuss, look through it more of the opportunities and potential. But we're not gonna be applying for anything until we have a plan in place that we're referencing.
Right.
Because you gotta
Right.
have a plan in
well,
place.
you've gotta sell them on why we
Yeah.
need the money.
Exactly. So part of that 69 corridor study will help with that, because that's one thing we're looking at is crossings and impacts for wildlife.
Now, the person who's being hired to come up with that plan, we, before we had written in the impacts, so we made sure that the wildlife impact was written into.
And if you look at the corridor study, wildlife is in there, so
Mhm.
we're covered in that.
So
Mhm.
won't they also be contacting Game and Fish?
Yes,
Who's
Yeah,
the-
you would
But
who's
that's
the-
just one road.
Yeah.
You need something that's simple, wide, you know.
That's where I'm thinking, like the funnel
Yeah.
fencing in my very cursory investigation, that's gonna be more of a high up on the hill type thing to start to guide animals to a different part to cross. And so, yeah, our thinking, even though the plan is corridor,
for our purposes, it could be much larger.
And that's where we also need to be talking to our wonderful people in the city's planning department, because you guys, would you be able to share with us some of the projects that you are aware are in the process? So that if we say we wanted at point A to point B, that you guys already are aware that just south of or whatever point A or whatever, there's gonna be this huge commercial, which would put the kibosh on, where we might want a crossing, because as has been pointed out, wherever we do these crossings or overpasses or underpasses, we have to have easements on the land so that the wildlife can continue using it, rather than having to go through a shopping center.
We'll have to get a wildlife study from Game and Fish. I'm sure they have updated
So there's
data
a new
to see
one.
where.
All that
we're-
They-
information needs to.
Yeah, they've scrutinized the highways. That's all part of this grant writing that's in here. All that's in there. We'll get it in.
Oh, yeah, and I can make
It's
sure you have
all-
access to that.
She just handed you the key to the kingdom,
Yeah,
and you don't know it yet.
I don't know
So I'll
what the
just come out
law
and
is.
tell you, she just handed you the key to the
It's,
kingdom.
it's ironic that we are, to get here today, that there's more development going on at Prescott, at Willow Creek Road and Willow Lake Road.
Mhm.
And because up in that development up there is where, when I first moved up here, I saw the remaining few members of the pronghorn Prescott herd.
Yeah,
And with all of the development
they're
that's up
still
there
there.
now, no, they're gone.
No, they're still there.
But
You can see them
we
every
can't
once in a
see the beauty from the distance, can we?
Yeah, you have to slow down.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're only this far above the grass.
But at any rate,
Anyway,
I
she
just,
handed you the keys to the kingdom. I'm telling you, we'll need.
And the
we'll
thing
need
is,
to talk.
if it's private property, expect it to get developed. I mean, that's just the thing, in the corridor, in the region, if it's
Mhm.
private property, expect it to be developed. Never expect it to stay vacant, mostly right now. So,
so that's gonna be a big issue. She handed us the keys.
Yes.
Yeah, not just JD, is that what you're saying?
Okay, thank you all.
so I
And
think
you
that's the
take-
direction, is that you guys will get together and like kind of review it a little bit more and come up with
Right.
like different type of things that we should be looking for as we move forward with these corridor areas.
Right.
Awesome, very
Great.
helpful.
You look stunned.
No, I'm just thinking of going back to what's happening with Glassford Hill, where the city, the county are coming together. And there may be, maybe Save the Dells is coming in, the Preservation Foundation, And I'm thinking that when you mentioned that it has to be non-private land, that we may be trying to get some more areas that are conserved easement wise, in order for us to have the impact to channel the animals somewhere.
We'll have to see where the issues are.
I'm telling you, you have the key. You just have to read it first. It's just.
Because part of funding is to get easements or
So-
get properties.
So put down there, several of the committee will review for the
Yes,
decision, okay.
I'll come up, we'll review it at their next meeting.
Perfect.
Okay,
Well, is there any information about when the retreat is gonna be?
For now, I believe September is when we're having it. I don't believe Allison has been able to nail down the dates. Any updates on that?
Yes, I do. Allison took the week off last week and she gave me homework to do, so let me see here. We do have a date. You'll be hearing the first of it. It is September the 22nd, Thursday, September the 22nd, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Prescott Resort like we did it last year.
Oh, that's good.
And again, Allison will be, she'll be back in the office this Thursday, so she'll send out a notice to you, to the TAC and the executive board as to the additional details, but we had narrowed it down to a couple dates and I had to talk to a few more people about their availability. So Thursday, September 22nd, 10 to 2, Prescott Resort. Allison will send you more info.
Thanks for asking that. Thanks, Vinny.
Okay,
I'm
well,
coming back from vacation.
Right, I didn't push you to.
okay, well, that was the end of our agenda, so we're at our adjournment
Great.
at 11:42.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Vinny.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
very much.
If you just hit end
Okay.
at the bottom
I
right,
will lose my recording.
no, it will